All right, everyone. Thank you for joining on this gorgeous Wednesday during autumn. Um, you're at the right place. We are here on our second part of our learning series webinar, which is the how and the whys. Last week we covered the why part of using a document management system and the top 3 reasons that people choose to use a document management system. Today we're going to actually get hands-on and actually see what we're talking about here, and give you a case scenario that we're going to follow through. My name is Orlando Ferrer with Informed Decisions. Today's webinar is being recorded, so we'll have this on our informeddecisions.com sites for viewing later or for sharing with anybody else that you need to share this with. Feel free to use your question and answer chat boxes as part of your webinar console. We'll be answering questions as they come up and at the end of the series, so please feel free to ask any questions that you have. We're going to keep this down to 20-30 minutes total. We're going to not have this go too long. We're just going to keep this nice and short. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Again, you're right at the right place. Second part of our document management system webinar, and we're going to keep the slides down to just 4 little ones, and that's it. Everything else is going to be hands-on. So we'll just get right into it. A little quick review. Some of you may have remembered this slide from last time, where this is the basic body of our document management setup, where we're actually taking in documents from different points, either from our IBMI system directly in from our IBMI machine into our iView module, which is really the heart of it all. That's going to actually do a lot of the work for us. And our outside sources, where we're actually taking documents, pieces of paper, and actually scanning them through. We suggest maybe using the Fujitsu Scanner. Here we have an F1 series model scanner tabletop. They're good, well priced and very efficient. Or you can actually, like most people take emails coming in with their bills and invoices. Maybe you have something coming in via email. Well, we can also ingest that into the system. We'll use our capture product and actually ingest that into our iView document management system. And it all ends up really where the main heart of it all is, and that's our iView Document Center, which is browser-based. It runs native on the IBMI and is really where your end users get their best experience, and you'll start seeing the most efficiency along that side of having a end user find the documents in one spot without necessarily having to get out of their seat, and using some intelligent metadata fields to actually retrieve their documents. So you actually see that in play. In today's case, we're actually going to keep along this model. We're limited in time. We can do further cases and scenarios if you want on a one basis, but for today we're just going to keep this as a case scenario. So we're actually going to have documents and invoice specifically generated through our iDocs document software on the IBMI. This will actually create the forms and actually get this out distributed via email or print or different methods. In this case, we're actually creating an invoice that's actually been generated by the iDoc system, and that's actually going to get picked up by our iView management system or document management system and immediately appear on our document center. At the same time, we're going to have somebody out there riding around with a bill of lading that they need to get signed, and once they come back, that's going to get scanned in and inserted into iView and also appear on our document management system. So we actually have 2 different routes of documents that are coming in into our document center. So the first one I'm actually just going to go into is, let's talk about the capture. This is where we're actually going to collect our paper document, and we're going to actually use our SciGen engine, which is Sci Capture engine, for the capture piece. And here we actually see a screen in where I'm actually highlighting 2 different documents that have in a folder, which normally will be picked up automatically as we're monitoring a folder for those documents to appear. So the minute somebody scans those into that folder, the engine will recognize there's documents to be picked up and will actually start that process. If I did it automatically, you wouldn't see much. So I'm going to do these steps manually so you see every step along the way. So in the first, I'm going to start with the capture piece. This is equivalent of the engine creating a batch, which it would do automatically normally. It would suck in or ingest those documents into the capture piece. And as you see here, we actually have a document on the right and a different one on the left on the same location, but different ones here. Okay, so two different documents. Now at this point, we've sucked in, this is a simple one, there's only two documents. We're going to suck those in and we're going to proceed to the next side of it, which is classification. And classification is a method to distinctly identify a document type, because we could at the same time be bringing in invoices, bill ladings, maybe purchase orders, maybe invoices from vendors, maybe work orders, all sorts of documents, legal, medical, all sorts of different things. This is a way to identify that we, in our setup, the different types of documents. So we're going to go through the classification process, and we've set this up already to identify these as incoming bill of ladings. And it's going through that. You'll see that was two documents of 2 pages. It's going to pick those up. It's going to identify those. Now, if you see here in the middle of the screen that this is our identifier, we're going to actually have a whole list. This specific one is going to be the hops. This is for a brewing company, and we're actually selling hops in this case scenario. And this is the bill of lading identifier. We actually have a default, and we can add all sorts of different document types in there. And as you see in here, this is our actual metadata that's being collected. So on the right-hand side, you see a blown up version of the actual document. I could shrink that down so that makes a little, so you see the actual document. In this case, actually, I want to show that a little closer. You see the green shaded area? This is a zone, and we've created a zone on the right-hand side of the document, so you actually search only this portion of the document, as we know that our shipping number that we're searching for in this field that we want to collect is on the right-hand side of the document. And we've created a zone. At the same time, we've created a child zone, which identifies the data to be in this red location. And there's a way to do that. We've actually anchored the zone, or this anchor saying I'm going to look for shipper's number, and when it sees that, it knows that the data is going to be to the right of it, which is the red area which we're collecting. And you can see the same thing when we do the ship to information. So it goes through that process, collecting everything. We can make little corrections along here if we needed to. There's all sorts of validations that we can actually pick up along the way, and so on. So in this case, it's doing the classifications, it's doing the indexing, and I'm going to close the batch, which normally goes into our quality assurance. So at this point, we'll see a data setup of our information that we've collected. So this is a data view of the information we've collected. We can go and see each document specifically tied into this. And this is all the information that's going to get brought up into our front end. So when we move on to the next portion of it, which is the migration, what's going to happen is this is going to end up on our front end of iView. And here at this point, we're actually, this is the user experience. They would normally log in. In this case, I'm logging in as an administrator. So there's a couple of functions I want to show you along the way here. And when that document gets migrated from the capture piece, it's going to go into an archive called the HOP bill of lading. And I'm just going to go in there and view the documents. And here they are. So the same documents that we ingested in there with that data that we were able to take off the documents to create the metadata, which we would use to search for in the future. So as you have hundreds and thousands of these documents along the way, and somebody wanted to find a bill of lading number, they can actually type in that bill of lading number specifically and type it in there, as I'm typing right now, and do a search and find the specific bill of lading that they want. And they can actually look up the document. As you see, this is the scanned document, which had the signature from out in the field. It has all the information. I can actually take this information and do all sorts of stuff with it as well. But you see that now a user can, at the endpoint, can actually sit at their desk, log on on a browser-based system, retrieve their documents pretty easily, and not have to get up and waste time going to find documents. Another point of it is that because this is machine driven, you'll see that there's human interaction is gone. Now there's no somebody waiting to get filed. It's not sitting in a pile to get filed. It gets scanned, automatically gets filed, and it becomes part of now something that somebody can search right away immediately. Now, with that being said, that's the documents coming into our document center. But we also talked about documents coming in from the machine, and this is our iDocs system. And here we actually have our iView setup, and we're going to actually look at the application that's going to bring in those documents. So we have two applications specifically we're going to look at. One is our bill of lading, which is what we just talked about. And in this case scenario, we actually have our index fields that we've created. We actually have created data spaces in the table for those index fields. In this case, because we are bringing that metadata information in from our capture piece, from a scan process, we're just creating space. So we're just going to say, you know, on one row from column 1 to column 20, so we're giving it 20 spaces, 30 spaces, and so on for each of these indexes. We're just creating spaces on our table. As that migration process happens, this table that's associated with this archive is getting populated with that metadata. So when our searching happens, we actually can find those very quickly. And at the same time, we're bringing in that PDF into our repository, which we have in our iView directory on our system. Now, to go back one step, those invoices that were being created in our iDocs system, the way that's going to look a little different. Again, we have our index fields, which is going to be our metadata for searching. However, this time, because we're bringing in a spool file from our IBMI system and using our iView or Inform system to actually create those documents, and here's the actual form application that we're using to bring those in, we are looking at the spool file and taking this information directly from the spool file to create that metadata that we would use to search. So we're actually giving it fields and locations from that spool file. And again, it writes that spool file into a table, it creates the PDF, and it puts that onto our system. So in this sense, if you go back to our front end and we go back to the archives, you'll see the invoices in here. Well, these were generated directly from our system, right from the IBMI. And again, these are going to look a little differently, less scanned. These are more machine delivered right from our IBMI. Now, the cool part about this is that down the road, you got to think about the user experience. You got to think about efficiency. You got to think about cost reduction. You got to think about keeping people in their seats, working, being efficient, maybe being on the phone with a customer, being on the phone with other departments, keeping things fluid, efficiency, not having to go find documents and not having to wonder, okay, did that get lost? It didn't get lost. Because this is, again, coming from a system that is the machine's actually doing the work for you, it's going to go where you configured it to go. There's no guessing. There's no, oh, that looked like a different letter. It's just going to go where it's going to go. So it keeps that working efficiently without the human error aspect of it. The cool part is that on this one right now is you're looking at the archive itself, and we can bring this up, we can do the search, we can do it when you have thousands of these and you know that it was you can combine the different metadata. You can create partial numbers. So if you think a customer is maybe it was ABC company or ABC Incorporated, well, you can just put ABC and it's just going to do a search for that. In this case, we also have a pull down for repeat customer numbers. So maybe as you have the same customer with different invoices every month, you can just say, oh, just give me your customer number, and all their invoices would pull up once you do a search. So keeping the efficiency, keeping the speed quick. We also have related documents, and this is an important aspect of it. So your accounting people look up the invoice because there was a question about the bill of lading, or there was a question about the whole process or something like that. So they find the invoice and they can go in here to related documents, click on it, and we've related the bill of lading that's associated with that invoice specifically, so they can just click on this and now also bring up the bill of lading. So they're working along, they click on the actual invoice, they see the invoice, okay, this is the invoice, they maybe have a question about the bill of lading or any other related documents that you tie into it. They can pull that up at the same time without having to retype in or go searching, and instantly they have their invoices that were created from the IBMI system and those documents that were imported in from paper into the capture system into our environment. And that, of course, should make for efficient lookups. Customer relationships should speed up. Everything that's tied into this process should speed up and become more efficient and relieve time from those end users, and making whatever department is using this able to use their time wisely. You're in here looking at the related documents. You saw that, but you even go a step further. We can actually email directly from our system, or in some case scenarios, maybe you want to send this a different way, fax it, whatever. You can print it. You can download it onto your local PC, so you can actually see that information right on your PC and just go from there. We have annotations, so if you have any questions about a document, you can actually write an annotation marker in here, and I can just say in here, so happy Wednesday, if I can spell Wednesday correctly, and I can just write a little note, right? Viewed with everyone, all is good. Okay, update it. It's going to timestamp it. It's going to have my profiles, and I can just keep adding on there. So down the road, if somebody actually looks at the annotations, they would see my remarks and comments in there for that document, and that would just follow that document along its life. And that's what you're looking in there. So the question is, how do we get to this process? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these documents. I'm just going to blank those out, because there's nothing like doing it live. So I'm going to go back to our iView system. You saw the capture piece already and how those get in. So on our iView side, we actually have an engine. And for those that have used our systems before in iDocs and that side of it, the document, we keep the same type of thinking along the way. We keep the same methods of doing things, or try to keep them so it makes sense for everyone and just some sort of consistency. What we're going to do is we're going to monitor an out queue for a spoof file to be available. When that spoof file comes into that handoff out queue, we're going to do a test. And in this case, we're going to look at the user data, and we're going to look for webinar. If that user data says webinar, then that's the spoof file we want to use. And we would do a merge with the HOP invoice application or iView application, which is going to follow those commands that we originally looked at for the metadata or the index fields, plus create the PDF and send it off to the right archive. And that's what we're going to do. All I'm going to go in here and do is go to an out queue, call archive, which is I have my spoof file sitting in. And it's this last one down here. I'm actually going to hold it and release it because this is working with a data queue. And I'm going to go in there. I'm going to move it out to handoff. And off it goes. And if I look up here, if I can type, this should disappear here in a second. Just keep hitting refresh. There it goes. I go to the front end. There was nothing here. And I'm just going to refresh this page, and instantaneously, voila, those invoices have been created. These are brand new ones that have been created. There they are. And automatically, since my setup of related documents have been set up, it relates to the bill of lading automatically. So if your bill of lading gets there first or your invoices get there first, it doesn't matter. Once the other one shows up, it will relate that document automatically as part of the setup. So that makes it, from an admin point of view, incredibly simple, incredibly useful to do. And here are some extra ones. I'm keeping an eye on time. We're right at about 20 minutes, and I'm just going to show you a couple extra things that are also helpful as part of this. One of them is our document import. So you saw how we can actually use the capture piece to bring in the documents. Well, whoops, here is a way to actually bring in documents manually. And I'm just going to go in here. I actually have an archive that I'm going to go to. I have import fun, as I call it. And in here, I have documents that I'm just importing manually. And I have some simple fields in here. I've configured this to look at a database field or a database file that I have on my system. And I'm just going to go in here and import the document. Oh, look at that. Okay. Either my internet just got slow or I just lost my VPN. Let's take a look. Yep, it's here. Okay. Sorry, I think that was a little internet problem. Okay, so nothing like doing it live. So I'm going to go to import documents and I'm going to select my import fund. This is going to be the archive in which I'm going to bring files that I have on my PC or on a directory that I have here. So I'm going to hit next. Here's my directory path of a directory in which I have some documents in. I can actually preview these documents if I wanted to. So I can actually say, what is that document? Oh, it's just this file, this report that I have here. Great. I'm going to actually select that. I'm going to edit the metadata because I want to be able to follow this, look up this document. And what I've done is I actually have tied in this archive with a physical file on my system. And I'm just going to search that file for the information that I need. Oh yeah, it's going to be this one that I want. I'm going to select that information. I could also do a partial search if I wanted to on this as well. So if I wanted to actually look at this and say, oh, bring that information in, I can, or just manually input it, all sorts of stuff. So I can actually tie the information or do a DBU lookup into a physical file to populate these metadata from a external metadata system or an internal. And I'm going to tie it all in. In this case, I just tied it into something simple here. I'm going to submit that. And off it goes. It disappears from my list of waiting documents. I go back into the archives. I go to import fund, and there it is. It's just waiting for me that I just imported that document in there. It's now in my part of my iView lookup, and I've just brought that in. That's come in handy for some folks that just need some quick import action. Also, we've added this multiple option here. This is a recent thing. So we've had some feedback on folks, especially with states collecting taxes, and maybe they have a request from a state or an agency, a tax agency, to actually send them multiple invoices. And we're talking, hundreds of invoices all in one shot. And a lot of times they'll send them a list. You can actually put that list into a CSV file, feed this in to the system, and generate and actually just do a mass lookup and a mass output of all those files, so you're not individually going one-on-one to do this. The equivalent of that is actually saying, what archive am I going to pick? Let's say it's going to be invoices. What field am I going to be looking up? Maybe it's invoice number, the actual value of the invoice that I'm going to be looking up, and how do you want that outputted? Do you want that saved so you can actually download it onto your PC and just forward it as a PDF, and that's going to be maybe multiple ones, or just printed? In this case, I'm just going to keep adding to a list, and maybe I have a list of all the different invoices that I actually want to list. So I just keep accumulating these along the way. Once I'm done, I actually do a search, and it would output that out there, and then download it, and actually give me a file with all those PDFs all one shot. So it's a great way to do a massive multi-archive search all in one shot, so you can actually look up at different archives as well. So maybe you have an archive that you're going to look up information on, then you have a different one as well, so you can actually look up different archives with different values at the same time, all in one shot, and just get a massive download of the actual PDFs that you need all in one shot. Okay. We are approaching that almost the end of time here for us as well, so we are going to be a little careful about time. But this is, the main ideas behind this is that if we go back to our principle, is this: you saw the case scenarios. You saw the reasons last week why people want this. This week is really how we actually did it, and we accomplished that. And we accomplished that by automatically taking up our documents or picking those documents up from our scanning options on a folder that's automatically monitored for those documents to come into. It gets fed into our iView module, which feeds it into the document center for instant access by our users, and the same thing for those documents being created from our iDocs applications and being dumped into iView so we can automatically see those. The main point behind this is that it's efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. These things are important for the end users. As an administrator, it's simple to use. You know where everything is. It's trackable. You actually can see the flow of action because either they'll be in a folder waiting to get picked up. You can actually track the process. You can have anything that's not processed looked up if there's a problem. So from an admin point of view, it makes it easier to track these things. So instead of having hundreds of people in your organization looking up for lost documents, it could be one admin or a super user that can find these documents in a process if something went wrong. But the reality is that this is machine driven, so those machines aren't making those mistakes. As long as you configure things correctly, they're going to process what you tell it to process along the way. So your end users end up happy, finding their documents, being more efficient, and long as department leaders and the whole company, everyone's just working a little less of trying to find their documents and actually using that data to get whatever answers they need so they can make the business run, which should feed directly to the bottom dollar. So that's today's action. What I would recommend is if you didn't quite see a scenario that would actually work out for you, then I would say, let's talk. Let's see what your needs are. We can actually show you a demonstration specifically to your needs, and we can go down that road. Now, if anybody has any questions, this is a great opportunity to ask any questions that you have along the way. Let me know what you have for questions. You have my email here, orlando@informeddecisions.com. We are just about 2 minutes away from our endpoint, so I'm going to start. I'm just going to wrap it up here. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to answer those for you. And thank you for your time here today, and for, like always, I do appreciate every one of you, and we'll talk along the way. So thank you. Bye-bye.